When it comes to this organ, this guy behind me here, the big old Midmer-Losh, I say, who doesn't love a mystery? I know I do. In the past, I've looked for things like the mysterious extra blower that may or may not have existed, and I think that one was kind of inconclusive. Carl Hersom showed me where the blower could have come into the main wind lines, but whether it actually existed or not, I'm not sure. I don't think it did, but maybe it did. I don't know. But they obviously intended for it, but it wasn't there. How about the soundproof room where all the percussions were at one point? Long gone, probably removed in some sort of renovation. But there's one more. There's a mystery that has not been resolved, and that is about the crescendo pedal. Both the 5 manual and the 7 manual organs both had a standard crescendo pedal, which is a device in pipe organs, especially electric action ones. I have seen crescendo pedals on tubular pneumatic organs, but not on tracker. And what a crescendo pedal does is when you open the pedal, it will turn on stops in the organ, but it will not physically move any stop tablets or draw knobs or tilt tablets. It's what's called a blind function. It does its thing, but there's no visual indicator that it's doing it. Usually there's a little indicator light on the name board that'll say crescendo on or something, so that you know that even though you may not see any stop tablets or stop keys on, stops are going to be playing. Well, okay, that's a very standard thing for pipe organs to have, is a crescendo pedal. They have one setting until the era of solid state, when it became easy to give memories to crescendo pedals. All of the organs that I'm familiar with always had one crescendo setting, and it was hardwired into the system. So what happens is you start opening the pedal, and it's always the right-hand pedal. You have the swell shades, the swell shoe pedals at the bottom of the console. The one on the far right, which is usually elevated a little bit and sometimes at a little bit more of an angle, that's the crescendo pedal. But you start opening the crescendo pedal, and it will start with the softest stops in the organ and build up, louder and louder, and then couplers will come on, so that if you're playing on one manual, it'll increase in volume evenly most of the time, depending on the organ, of course, until you have the crescendo pedal all the way open, and usually it's almost full organ, but not quite. Usually they leave a few stops off of crescendo so that you have somewhere to go, so it can get even louder when you hit a sforzando piston or something like that, or have a stop that's even louder than anything which is on the crescendo pedal setting. Well, the Midmer-Losh here in 1929 was kind of a groundbreaker with its crescendo variability setting. What it is that the crescendo pedal had 4 settings, which were marked, well, I'll get to that in a second, but there were 4 different settings for the crescendo pedal. Depending on which hitch down you used, which toe stud you activated, when you opened the crescendo pedal, you would get a different set of stops 4 times, 4 different settings. That's something that has only become common relatively recently with the age of solid state memories, where you can set crescendos as much as you want. But let's read from Stephen Smith's book here about the crescendos. Quote on page 74, on both consoles there are 4 crescendo selectives, that is to say the toe studs or hitch downs, kind of like paddle things that you see in the thumbnail for this video. There are 4 crescendo selectives labeled MF, F, FF, and FFF, that is to say mezzo forte, forte, double forte, and triple fortissimo. And he says, although these labels actually have nothing to do with the dynamic levels, 1, 2, 3, and 4 would perhaps have been more appropriate labels. The selectives may be used individually or collectively, and Senator Richards envisaged that each one would provide a different effect, making use of some keyboards and departments while leaving others free for hand registration if desired. A summary of the original settings as determined by Arthur Brooke are shown on the following table. And so mezzo forte says specialist string effects permitting a crescendo from almost all string resources, only enclosed stops are used, etc., etc. The next one is softer stops like Gemshorn's flutes. Double fortissimo uses mid-auditorium departments with some augmentation by stage departments. No strings are used. And then triple fortissimo, the main organ at the front of the hall, no mid-auditorium departments used, etc. And it says the keyboard's involved and then departments involved. But here's the kicker. On both consoles, the Crescendo pedal is mechanically linked to its contactors. Of course, you'll see that. And a switchboard housed in a substage room allows adjustment of the various Crescendo selectives settings. That has never been found. And I've been curious about that. So over the last couple of visits, I was nosing around a little bit, but it was pretty much the point of coming up here this visit to find out what the truth is about that substage setter board or switchboard, whatever you want to call it. And so it's been resolved. We've figured out how this originally worked. And so that's what I'm going to show you in this video. I'm going to take the camera off the tripod and we're going to go inside the console here to look at the extraordinarily over-the-top Crescendo system and trace it through down to the switch room down in the great blower room. So inside the console, I wish this camera got a wider shot, but here's the back of the keyboards. I'll turn on my little flashlight here so you can see. You've seen this before in one of my videos. So there are 4 Crescendo contact assemblies, and they're up high because there was nowhere else to put them. And they are up there. This is one assembly here, this is another assembly, and then there are 2 on the other side of the console. And they're all connected by this big axle here that goes all the way across the console. And when you move the rod, that is to say you move the pedal, these contacts make onto this plate. And if I pull it back, see, the contact area is only this area here. This is an insulator. There's no contact there, and so as you open the pedal or close the pedal, it makes all these contacts hit that piece of metal right there and turn them on. Sorry, it's hard for me to get this shot very well. Maybe this one's a little bit easier. There. Now there are contacts on both sides of these assemblies, and I counted them up, and each one of these assemblies has 260 contacts on it. Times 4, that's 1,040 individual contacts. And on the other side, that one has contacts too, and then there's the ones on the other side. And then coming around this side, you see the axle up here, which is connecting all the assemblies, and there's this chain and a little sprocket right there, and that's what actually moves the Crescendo indicator on the dashboard. Well, it is sort of a dashboard, but the name board, that chain. And then up here, if you look back there, there's another 2 assemblies over there. So you have 2 on that side, 2 on the bass side of the console, and 2 on the treble side. There you can see a better view of the contacts and the plate that they ride on. Maybe I can get a shot. Now, I can't move the axle by hand while I'm holding the camera like this. Anyway, so that's that, and I'll put that back later. So, from here, from inside the console, you have all those wires going to all those contacts, all there. I traced them out, and they go up and over and then down, and they do not join in with any of the regular junctions down here. They go straight out the back of the console without meeting anything else inside the console. Now that's pretty unusual in the organ world, because usually the crescendo will junction in to the stop junctions inside the console, and then that whole thing goes out to the chamber to activate the stops. But here, nothing's joined in here because it has to go downstairs and be switched further on, which is the next step. So I'm going to head downstairs and show you the next step in what the crescendo does. All right, so I'm back down here in the blower attic, as I call it, the switching area above the great blowers in the great blower room. I've done several videos from this location, but this right here, this whole thing is the Crescendo and Sforzando machine, if you will. This is where all that switching takes place. And I've looked at this for a long time, but until yesterday, I had no clue how it operated, and actually, it's pretty simple. So, long story short, you have the cables from those Crescendo contacts, the Crescendo assemblies, both from the 7 manual console and the 5 manual console, come into this room. The 7 manual cables come in over there. I'm not sure where the 5 manual cables come in for the main part, but what I do know is that the Crescendo pedal cables for the 5 manual console come in through a void, a little hole in the masonry over here, directly in front of me, about 5 feet down, and they come up right there, right next to the camera, and come into this trough, which is right here, and then up this trough, and then into this cable right here. So you have the Crescendo's cables from the 5 manual and the 7 manual console come into this switching assembly. And what happens is those Crescendo contacts get wired to the switch fingers of these switches here. Okay? And there's a bunch of, there's like 50 switches here. And if you look at the way the switches are numbered, it'll say Crescendo 1, 1 to 85, 1. Crescendo 1, 1 to 85, 2. Crescendo 1, 1 to 85, 3. Crescendo 1, 1 to 85, 4. And then it'll have Crescendo 2, 1 to 85, 1. Crescendo 2, 1 to 85, 2, 3, and 4, like that. And what it is, each one of these panels, I mean, this is a panel, this is a panel, this is a panel, etc. There's 7 panels here. The first 4 switches are the 7 manual console, their Crescendo contacts wired in, these numbers here, and then the 5 manual console is the next 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then Sforzando 1 and 2, times 7. What happens then is that all the bus bars at the bottom of each panel gather up into a cable behind this big wad here. You can't see it, but there's another cable that goes up and out. And it goes over to another part of the chamber, which I'll show you in a minute. So when you put on, say, Crescendo 2, the toe stud on either one of those consoles, and there's reversibles up here and relay magnets down here for all those reversible functions are right here. It will turn on, say, well, let me do a better example. 7 manual console, Crescendo 1 setting. It will turn on 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, all of the ones for console 1 on all 7 of these boards. And then when you open the Crescendo pedal, all of those contacts will be making through here, through the bus bars, and into these cables, which then go over to the main panel assembly in the other part of the chamber. If you look at 1 and 1, or 2 and 2, and 3 and 3, they're wired the same. Sometimes they don't wire the whole row of 85, because each one of these is 85. 85 bus bars on all of these assemblies. Now, that poses an interesting question. 85 times 7 is 590 something, and down here, this bus bar assembly goes up to number 590. But there's 1,040 Crescendo contacts. Yes. And so this cable comes down and wraps around the back of this board, and there's a huge wad of hundreds of wires that weren't used. I mean, they so overdid that, it's really funny. I mean, don't tell any copper thieves about it, because I mean, there's at least 5 pounds of copper there in all that wasted wire that they didn't use. On a crescendo system, you usually do not have nearly as many crescendo stops as you have stops on the organ, because you want to have somewhere to go. As I said, you don't want to have everything come on crescendo, because you want to be able to have something more than that with sforzando or solo stops or something like that, or hand registration. So on, the 7 manual console had 1,200 some stops. You had 1,040 crescendo wires, but of those they only used not even 600 of them. And that's for both consoles. So you had, well, I guess you'd have almost 1,000 wires left over, or 800 or something, because you have 1,040 wires coming from both consoles, and you're only using 590 of them. Now, the other thing with this assembly is that the bottom 2 switches on every panel are the Sforzando 1 and Sforzando 2. And I'm not sure what the difference between those are, because what they did is they simply took a piece of phosphor bronze wire and shorted all of the fingers together and fed it with positive. So when one of these turns on, it's energizing all of these stops at once. Everything's on. It's another, well, you would say a blind function, because when you put on Sforzando, the stop tablets don't move, tilt tablets, draw knobs, whatever you have on an electric action console, they don't move. They just sit there, but a little red light comes on saying, hey, the whole organ's on, watch out. Of course, that never stopped some organists from not realizing that and tromping all over the pedals in the quiet part of the service when the light burned out, and the congregation gets a very big surprise. But hopefully the lights worked here. But if you put Sforzando 1 on all of the Sforzando 1 switches on all these panels, would all go on at once and energize all the stops going out. Now, one thing that I don't understand, and I have no idea how they did it, is if you look at the 7 manual console, you have 4 different assemblies, each numbered 1 to 260 individually, because I looked, but they're not treated as 4 individual groups. When I first saw the system, I thought, okay, you have 4 assemblies, so number 1 assembly is going to be for one setting, and number 2 assembly is going to be for another one, and so on. No, they're all used together. They are used as a single set of 1,040 wires. How they determined exactly which stop came on exactly when, and the travel of the pedal, I have no clue, because 1,000 some contacts in just that little bit of travel, because it travels, the foot motion is like that of a swell shade. It's very similar. Having 1,000 contacts make in that little bit of space, no idea. And how they determined which contact went where, in what order, I have no clue. But they did somehow. So I'm going to take the camera, I'm going to go to the other part of the chamber and show where it connects on the other end, where this came from. And that was kind of the discovery yesterday, figuring out where this cable in back here went. It just disappears into all these wads of cable, but traced it out over there, and that was a solution. So I'm gonna reach over here and take the camera. Reach under here. So here we have a perfect example. Here's a board which has a bunch of stops on it. I'm not sure exactly how they determined the numbering system, because this has, well, I can't read it, it's like 191, 189, 210, 194, 302, 174, 186, and so on. And up at the top, up here it says chamber. Well, that's been replaced with new wiring because that's in the swell. So it has the new color-coded wiring. So there was a cable that went up this side, and that's been disconnected and it's replaced with this one. Because these bus bars go straight through, it doesn't matter if you wire on this side or this side. But Look at this cable right here. This was cut off many years ago, and it would have gone up this row, and here are bus bar wire tabs, which obviously used to be soldered and were disconnected. And here's another set that are disconnected. All of these stop junctions have a cable that's been cut off, and you can see where there used to be things soldered on to the tabs, and they've been eliminated over and over. So that's how it worked. That big bundle of cable coming out of the Crescendo machine got split up, and it would come to all these stop junctions, and as a contact was made through the switch, through the bus bar over there, it would then be fed over to these panels and wired on to wherever they were. Now, some of these, I think, may still be connected. Like this one appears to be a Crescendo setting, possibly, or maybe it was this, no, that's a new one, and left in place, a few of them. Of course, the other thing that this means is that the Sforzando stops were the same as the Crescendo stops. And if the Crescendo didn't go all the way up to, the 50-inch reeds or something, then they would have had to add a switch somewhere. Or maybe they just left it, I don't know. But on all of these, you can see where there used to be things soldered that have been disconnected, and that was the Crescendo. So I'm going to work my way back over. Try to be slow. And there you can get the full view of that switch stack. So this is the part of the video I call, what have we learned? Well, let's see. So the Crescendo wires came directly down from the 7-manual console and the 5-manual console. They junctioned in to this board, went through this switching system, and were sent out to the stop junctions in the other corner there of the relay room. You notice the one thing I've not mentioned this entire time was a setter board or switch board in some substage room, which allowed variability of the Crescendo to be set later. The reason is it didn't exist. It was never built, it never happened. They got to get this thing done, and that's how they did it. And it would have worked fine, but you wouldn't have been able to just go in and just reset your Crescendo selectives with a little setter board kind of pin bus bar arrangement like you could with, say, the combination action in the 5-manual console, which had a similar setter board setup. And I can tell you what it would have looked like is this little swell setter thing here. And I'm still not exactly sure what that did, but it's like the little stop action things where you go like that and it would turn it on and turn it off like that. So it just didn't happen. It's not there. So there's one mystery solved. The Crescendo setter board in the sub room didn't happen, but it would have worked just fine. Now, interestingly, unfortunately, it wouldn't work now because those cables have been cut. But in theory, if they hadn't been cut, all you would have to do is just physically block on some of these switches and the Crescendo would work. It's all connected up in the right way, but because they cut all those cables over there for some reason, I don't know why, it wouldn't do anything. Now, it might turn on a few stops here and there, but we don't even know if it would turn on stops in divisions that aren't playing or aren't connected yet at all. So things could be coming on and you wouldn't know it. So for now, it's just left the way it is. So hope you found that interesting, and if I can find another mystery to solve, I'm going to.